From WWE's SummerSlam Spotlight, breaking barriers in MMA, Raine Cruz joined me to share how she's inspiring the next generation of athletes and announcers. I really enjoyed this one. You're going to want to stay tuned because her story will fire you up. And if you are enjoying this podcast and getting fired up, please give me a subscribe, like, please share this content as well. I always appreciate everyone's support and always looking forward to hearing those comments. Now, ringside Raine Cruz, let's get it. Welcome back to Fight Capital, where we enter the ring of combat sports business. I'm your host, Ryan Rappaport. Today, I'm lucky to be joined by Raine Cruz, also known as Ringside Raine. She's a trailblazing ring announcer who gained prominence after winning WWE's TikTok contest in 2021, leading to her role as a guest announcer at SummerSlam. Since then, she has expanded her career into mixed martial arts, serving as a cage announcer for Up Next Fighting in California. And additionally, Raine co-hosts the Raine Check podcast, where she interviews athletes and discusses combat sports. Thanks for joining me today, Raine. How are you and where are you joining from?
I'm doing good. I am joining from Ontario, California.
Well, I actually have had a couple guests from Ontario. I don't know if you know Desiree Wadaker and Gaston Bolanos, but I know there are some other Ontario residents, so you're
nice.
in good company there. Yeah.
That's
well,
awesome.
I appreciate you taking the time today. I'm just curious. You transitioned from a WWE fan to announcing SummerSlam after winning that TikTok announcer contest. Share a little bit just how that experience influenced your career.
Oh my God. So that experience helped me realize that, you know what, this is something that I am meant to do, right? Because there's one part of like the dream we're in, okay, you work towards your dream, right? And then you set like a big goal for yourself. And a part of the reason as to why I wanted to win the WWE announcer contest was to kind of test myself. I wanted to make sure that I was ready for that kind of stage because it's a big stage, right? Compared to like the independent wrestling promotions that I have worked with in the past, the WWE ring, it's a bigger stage. And so I wanted to make sure that it's something that, okay, that's my dream. Now, will I be really ready for that kind of pressure? You know, when there's like a bunch of cameras pointed at you, when there's like a bunch of people watching you, you're not just there, but all over the world. I wanted to make sure that, okay, it's something that I would really enjoy, because if not, then, you know, what's the point of chasing the dream, right? And then, so I won the contest, and, you know, I got to be inside the WWE ring and ring announce at SummerSlam, and I felt really comfortable, and I wanted to do it over and over again.
Well, I watched the video of your announcement. There's just so much power and strength behind your announcing. I'm just a huge fan of it, and what a cool experience to be there in the middle of the ring at SummerSlam. But I know that you also spent a significant amount of time behind the camera, and you've also worked as a researcher in news. I've talked to a lot of people who create content and a lot of people behind the camera, and they're always unsure to get out there in front of that camera. But transitioning into that WWE ring announcing, knowing that you did that, is so inspiring. What motivated you to pursue that path, and what obstacles have you encountered in your way here as you've moved into announcing as a female?
So I didn't really know that I could ring announce. It just happened by accident. All I knew at that time was I loved wrestling and I wanted to be a part of it somehow. And so I first signed up with Santino Brothers Wrestling, and this was during the pandemic, and they had an online class, which was, you know, kind of like Wrestling 101. And I told my coach, I said, look, I'm not trying to be a wrestler. I want to be a manager. And so I got to meet some, you know, classmates, and one of them referred me to my very first promoter. And he said, look, I don't have any manager roles right now, but I can have you interview the fighters, the wrestlers. And I said, sure. And so I did that for my very first wrestling gig. My second one, that was supposed to be the plan as well. But, you know, maybe half an hour before the show started, the promoter tells me, oh, Raine, we canceled the interviews. And I was like, oh, God, we drove 6 hours to get here. Like, is there anything else that I could do? And he said, hey, we don't have a ring announcer. And I was like, can I try? And if I suck, just let me know. And I tried it, and he told me, yeah, just keep going, like for the rest of the night. And I was like, sure. And I did it. And the next thing I know, I was getting booked as a ring announcer. And it was kind of one of those things where, and it's like, I didn't really plan for it. I was just open to like the opportunities. And I took it, and I just kind of felt like, you know what? I really enjoy this role. Like, I found purpose in doing it. As far as like obstacles, one would definitely be, in the local wrestling scene, they don't really consider ring announcers as like a paid gig. So that was kind of like, sometimes you meet promoters who are like, okay, thank you. And when you're starting out, you just want opportunities. So, you do those kinds of gigs. And then there are some where, they would, when you tell them, hey, this is my rate, they would kind of feel like, wait, what? Like, wait, what? Like,
oh, we have to pay you?
Like, yeah, like, you're not a wrestler. Yeah. Like, my budget is just for wrestlers. And I'm like, okay, you're making me drive and burn gas and, and I could totally understand, because some of the local promotions, they're basically like a small business too. But I feel like at some point I kind of felt like, okay, wait, I'm putting in my time here too, and you're making money off of like me doing this thing. Granted, I'm not like a wrestler, but I was like, okay. The other obstacle would be, I think right now I am currently facing it as a female cage announcer. For the most part, it's just guys who are announcing in the MMA scene. And I think part of me is like, okay, is this really a scene that I can be a part of, right? Because the only female ring announcer that I have seen in MMA was Lillian Garcia, and she's not even doing it anymore. And I know there's another one actually for 1FC, Nara, and I think that's about it. And so I think that's kind of like an obstacle in a way, but I do see it as a fun challenge, because I feel like that's the part wherein you kind of try to like break the barriers, right? Like, okay, there's not a lot of females in that scene. I mean, I'm in there right now, and I'm truly grateful for Up Next Fighting for giving me the opportunity, the platform to, be a cage announcer. And I love showing everyone that, hey, I can do it too.
Well, speaking of Up Next Fighting, that's where I first found out about you. The Schmo turned me on to it, funny enough, and I know that he's done some work with them as well. What led you to teaming up with Up Next, and how did you find that opportunity?
Oh, God. So, kind of going back to when I started talking about wrestling, like how I started, right? I just felt like I hit my ceiling in terms of like working with like local wrestling promotions. And I wanted more. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to grow as a ring announcer. And so one night I was like, man, I don't know. I felt like I hit a dead end. I was on LinkedIn, and I just typed announcers. And then I added every single announcer that I could see on LinkedIn. And, for those who have accepted my invitation, I sent them a message. I said, hey, my name is Raine Cruz. I'm a ring announcer in California. I want to expand my experience into boxing or MMA. I've had a few responses. One of them offered me to, hey, why don't you try out here in Colombia? Like, I have like a boxing promotions in Colombia. And another person told me, hey, maybe you can hit up like promoters and send them your demo tape. And that was Joe Martinez. And at that time, I it just said he's a ring announcer, but I didn't really look into his profile. And later on that day, I was watching UFC Fight Night, and then I saw a guy named Joe Martinez. So I messaged this guy on LinkedIn. I said, I think I saw you on TV. And he's like, yep, that was me. And so I thought that was really cool that, he took some time, to respond to me and, tell me, hey, send your demo tape to a list of like promoters on the California State Athletic Commission's website. And that's what I did. I sent my demo tape to them. I got some no's. I got some, hey, we already have someone. And finally, I got my yes. And that was Up Next Fighting. They told me they, might have an opportunity for me. And they gave me a date, and that was May 12th of last year. And that was my very first UNF event. And, after the event, they're like, yeah, come back for more UNF events. And I was like, yep, sign me up. So I'm very, very, grateful that, first for Joe Martinez for being like a mentor to me, and then to Up Next Fighting as well for giving me, the platform to do what I love to do as a ring announcer.
I love the perseverance. That's so amazing. And Joe Martinez is obviously a legend in the sport, does a great job for the UFC and obviously his history in boxing as well.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance that role as a or in that role as a cage announcer? How do you prepare for events, and what techniques do you use to engage the audience and get everyone going in the stands?
Ooh, so yeah, there's a lot of preparation involved. Like for me personally, I love being over prepared, right? Because it helps me to kind of just like on show days, I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna do my thing. I'm just gonna have fun. I have the information that I need. So leading up to the show, it's like the nerdy side of ring announcing, just research, getting data, writing them down according to how I would want to announce it. And like the actual show day, I kind of have like a routine. There's like I love free food, and for the most part we have free food at the event, but I normally bring my own food because it's kind of like part of my routine. I don't want I want to make sure that I'm eating something that's okay for my stomach. It kind of just like helps with me with my mindset that hey, I'll be energized throughout the night. And as far as like my voice, I like drinking tea. So I like drinking hot tea with honey. Um, and for me, I just like reading my cards and kind of like rehearsing in my head. Like, okay, how do I want to express this? How do I want to introduce this fighter? What is this fighter's story that I want to express to the people? And and as I do the announcement, and then when I see the fighters reacting, I could hear the crowd going because now they're seeing that we're interacting inside the cage, and the crowd gets pumped up. So the more I hear the crowd, the more I see the fighters get pumped up, the more I try to use my voice to kind of like, okay, let's go. Let's get this party started.
Well, I mean, you also have the Raine Check podcast, which
Mm-hmm.
allows you to interview the fighters beforehand, which I'm sure helps. I mean, for me, I'd be terrified of messing up people's names, and so I imagine maybe getting that one time beforehand helps with that. But talk to me a little bit how that role in on the podcast has enriched your perspective on combat sports.
Oh God, I've learned so much in about the MMA industry and just like the fighters in general just by talking to them. And I love how like the fighters, I feel like they're people too, and sometimes we just see them inside a cage, they do their thing. 3 minute rounds or whatever. You see what like 15 minutes of them or whatever. But I feel like having a platform like the Rain Check on millions.co, it's such a great way to get to know them. People get to know the fighters, and as for me, I learn something from them. Um, it's cool to listen to their stories because to me, I pick up something, right? Like kind of like the discipline that they have. Like, for example, one of them talked about how fighting is not just a physical aspect; it's also like a mental aspect. And for me, I kind of took it as what? Yeah, I might not be fighting inside a cage, but with everything that we do, we may have the physical ability, but sometimes it's the mental aspect that stops us. It's kind of like the fear that, okay, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I can't do it. But at the end of the day, it's just your mind thinking that you can't, And I feel like when you do all of the prep work, when you train, you do all of your the things that you need to do to feel as prepared as you can be. It just kind of comes down to like, okay, like your mind, you have to condition it to like, okay, you'll be fine. You just gotta like let it go and do your thing.
We're so self-conscious. I think it's just like a human being thing. But in the end, I can't. It's funny. I had my 100 podcast last month, and I told the Elliot Marshall, who is the second time he was my number one, and I said. When I wrote him an email. I was like, "We got to do another one. I want to have you on 100." When I went back and watched podcast number one, I was almost like embarrassed. I was embarrassed when it happened, and he was like, "I thought you did a great job." I was like, I was excited to do it again. I was like, "Hey everyone, quick favor to ask. Did you know that nearly 80% of the people tuning in right now aren't subscribed yet? That subscribe button down below is what powers me every week to keep putting out these podcasts. Big shout out and thank you to everyone that's been supporting me for this. I couldn't do it without you. If you're enjoying the content, please subscribe below. It means the world to me. And for everyone supporting me, thank you so much. Now back to the show. No, I thought I was writing or wrong, but we just get in our heads sometimes, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like, especially you, because you got the podcast, you're doing the ring announcing, and there's definitely got to be some versatility there. How do you manage the responsibilities of you being a ring announcer? And talk to me a little bit about some of the skills that you've developed from both of those experiences, doing the podcasting and the ring announcing.
So my responsibilities as a ring announcer, for me, I've always seen it as like my purpose, like as to why I'm there. And I feel like I've always seen my purpose as, hey, I'm the one introducing the fighters, so what do I need then? And then that kind of gives me a list. Okay, I need like this kind of information, that kind of information. I need to kind of make sure I pronounce their names properly. So I feel like once you find your purpose, it wouldn't feel so much of a task anymore. Like the responsibilities that you have, they wouldn't feel like so much of a task because now you kind of see like the reason as to why you're doing it. In terms of the podcast, it's like I love that when I'm not ring announcing, I get to kind of, meet the fighters still through the podcast. So for me, it's kind of like the opportunity to kind of like, okay, you know what? There's no fights coming up. Okay, I get the opportunity to talk to you. And then, still the same thing, like do my fighter research, double check their names. So it's kind of like, they're kind of like the same, except that the podcast, I do it like virtually from home. And in the ring announcing, I do it inside a cage.
I have unfortunately murdered a couple of guests' names in the past, so much respect to you for having that. I know it's hard there. Looking ahead, what are some of your aspirations in combat sports or sports in general, and how do you plan to continue to keep breaking barriers as a female announcer?
Oh God, my aspiration is to get that full-time ring announcing gig, and I'm shooting for the moon, and I see myself in the UFC one day. I truly believe that there is a space out there for myself. You know, I something really cool happened to me at my very last event. There was this female. She was probably like 12 years old, and my friend brought her to our event, to our Up Next Fighting event, and I got to meet her before the show started. And later on that night, I ran into her, and she tells me, she looked at me, and she was like, "Oh my God, you're so cool." And like, I never had someone look at me that way. That's like, it was like the look that I gave to John Cena when I met him. Like, oh my God, you're right in front of me. She saw me as if I was John Cena. Like, I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. And it kind of like later on, my friend told me that when she dropped off this little girl to her mom's house, she couldn't stop talking about me. And it made me realize how much of an impact I'm doing, with, ring announcing, in the MMA scene. There's little girls out there who see me and think, oh God, like that is an avenue for me. I can do that too one day. Like I see myself in her. And so for me, it kind of made me realize, you know what? yeah, there is a reason why I'm doing this. There is a reason why barriers, need to be broken, and that's why I'm here. And I love it. And I love that I get to represent, you know, myself. I get to represent, women, and that there's little girls out there that see me and then they feel like, "Hey, oh my God, this is not just for guys."
I love that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where your career keeps going. Shout out to millions.co, a great team there where you can find your podcast, The Raine Check. But if anyone else is getting this and they want to get in contact with you or they want to learn more about you and follow this journey, how can people follow you and continue to engage in your content?
Yeah, you can follow me at Ringside Raine. That's Raine with an E, Raine, on Instagram. I'm also on TikTok, YouTube, and on X. I'm more active on Instagram though, so please do follow me there. Send me a direct message, post comments on my stuff. You can also find me on millions.co. That's where I host The Raine Check, which is also available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Well, Raine, thanks so much. Can't wait to see you back in action for the next fighting event, and looking forward to following your career as you make it into the UFC one day.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.